pains me even to have to try to poke holes in his case because it's made out of titanium. Well, it is about that time again. Lo, how time flies, but it is time for our first crack at the NBA awards. We got lots of interesting stuff for you joining us here for the first time, and it's on YouTube. Would love to get a like and subscribe. You can also check out some of our other stuff, including our clutch calls. Last one got 50,000 views. Holy algorithm. Shocking. But we also, the meat and potatoes of what we're doing here is this podcast, and you can listen to every podcast that we do on Dunc'd on Prime ad-free. So let's get into this, Danny. We're going to do the league awards. We're going to do a few of the awards that we have invented as well. Try to tell the story of the season as it has existed so far with the data. Any caveats that we need to provide here before we begin, since this is our first time doing this?
These are not predictions. This is, if the season ended right now, this is how we would have it. We will explain over the course of this. I in particular have a specific philosophy on all NBA that differs from MVP. I will explain that. But this is not who we think will be award X at the end of the year. This is not that at all. And in fact, I try not to put predictions in at all. I try to make this a reflection of what we have seen, not what we will see.
Yeah, and certainly it's a lot more fun to give you our opinion on who the most valuable players in the league and all these categories have been, rather than just trying to predict what our esteemed colleagues will do. They have their own opinions. We have ours. And so the meta, trying to predict what everyone else is going to do and who will win it, not really what we're into. What we are into, though, is a great crop of potential MVP players. I'll just let you stick it out here first. Who's your MVP?
As often in recent vintage, it is a close call between Nikola Jokic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I am going with Shai at the moment. I mean, I don't know how long we want to laud these two players that, of course, deserve all of it. But it's interesting. They have, in some ways, similar profiles. So they have largely similar roles within their team's offenses. So that's something that I really like to look at, something I truly value, is like we use total creation. And so that kind of incorporates more things than backcourt reference usage and other things. 50% for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 50.3% for Nikola Jokic. Those are not the highest in the league, but they are extremely high. And what makes those two special as offensive players is that they have this large role within their offense, and their offenses are great. Before going into Monday's games, the Shai Thunder, when he's on the floor, 124.2 offensive rating. The Nuggets, a ridiculous 128.1 when Jokic is on the floor. So I think their offensive resumes are actually fairly comparable. EPM sees them as in the same vicinity, sees Jokic as better on offense, and DPM sees Shai as superior. But for me, the tiebreaker as it exists is that not only is Shai a superior defender, he is a superior defender who doesn't play the most important position defensively on the floor. And so I think a lot back to our friend John Hollinger's argument when we did top 10 players about how it's easier to construct a great team around Shai Gilgeous-Alexander than it is Nikola Jokic, because you can make up for, it's harder to make up for a center who's deficient defensively than it is for a two guard. And Shai is a great defensive two guard. He's a part of the greatest defense in modern vintage. We'll see what the full season numbers are. So I'm Shai over Jokic, and those two 1.75 miles over everyone else.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, but I see a lot of times that Nikola Jokic is deemed the obvious best player in the world. Stan Van Gundy said on Zach Lowe's podcast that if you ask 30 GMs who they would want to start a team with this year, the answer would be Nikola Jokic. And you know what? I think that Nikola Jokic would probably be a better player on more teams than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. However, and again, this is something that John and I talked about, that you and I have been talking about a lot too last year in the MVP discussion, that the Thunder are just an all-time great team right now. They had an all-time regular season last year. They are 20-1. Like historically, if you think about it, like I usually don't go in for these sorts of things, but you would think, right, that the obvious MVP would be the guy who's on a team that's 20-1 and is putting up unbelievable numbers, right? Like
and has spent most of the season without their second best player.
Yes, that's another thing. And certainly their second best offensive player. So you would think that Shai would be sort of the default, and then Jokic would have to overcome that, which there are certain numbers you could look at in which he would. But ultimately, I think the Thunder have one of the best defenses of all time. Is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander the number 5 reason probably why they have that defense? Yeah, I would say that's probably correct. But when you consider his offensive role, there really is nobody else, I would say, who has this much of an offensive role, who's as good defensively as him, and particularly considering that he's not in a critical role. I mean, maybe you could say Giannis, when he's at his best, is up there among this group. But as we're going to go through all these players, there's nobody anywhere close to this type of offensive player who's as good as he is defensively, and he fits right into their system. And yeah, he's not very good at guarding the ball or getting through screens, but he also is unbelievable making help plays around the basket. And he's also someone who's not at all a pigeon. Teams try to attack him because there's nowhere else and they kind of want to wear him down. But he's certainly, he's no James Harden or Trae Young or any of these guys that you want to be calling up. You just kind of have to because there's nowhere else to go. And so, yeah, Nikola Jokic could not be on a defense that was this good. I think you could put any 4 players around him you wanted to, and you would not be this good because they are, what are they now? 5-6 points better? I haven't checked it in the last 3 or 4 days. Better than league average defensively. And it is weird when most of his resume is offense to say that defense is a bigger part of it. But if you're really looking at the ceiling of a team, I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander gives you a higher ceiling than Nikola Jokic. We've seen it. Nikola Jokic's teams, they haven't had as much talent as the Thunder, but I think he's never won more than 57 games. And he's never made it past the conference finals except for once when they won the championship. And he's only been in one other conference finals aside from that. So I think Nikola Jokic, you throw him on any team, although it's not like Shai has all this talent around him on offense, like he is a pretty good one-man band. But so, yeah, you know what? Nikola Jokic, maybe 20 of the 30 teams, you probably would rather have Jokic, maybe even more than that. But the reality is Shai is on this Thunder team, and he is pushing it to these incredible heights that I don't think Jokic could reach, to where as good as Jokic has been, and he's having his best season so far in terms of his on-off 14.2 net rating when he's on the floor, Shai dwarfs that 19.3 when he's on the floor. As I think you said those numbers already. So certainly, and I think also, frankly, the defense with Jokic on has been getting a little bit lucky with opponent shooting luck as well. So yeah, I went on a long time there. I've got much more. I think this is the most interesting discussion we're going to have. We're going to take plenty of time with it, but how do you react or build on any of those? I must admit to being a little disappointed that you also picked Shai, because I thought I was going to have a controversial opinion here.
I mean, you and I are more aligned together. We talk a lot about basketball, and I think that Jokic is unbelievable. But Jokic is also having this ridiculous scoring season. I mean, 74% true shooting on the kind of role that he has on the team. And that isn't through the crazy 50% from 3. He's making all of his 2s. He also has the highest assist rate per 36 minutes of anyone that we're seriously considering. So has this gargantuan.
I mean, I can tell you something else, Annie. Nikola Jokic has the highest true shooting percentage of someone who qualify in NBA history right now. Mm-hmm. But he's not someone who's taking 4 shots a game that are all dunks at the rim. He's taking a ton of shots. His scoring usage is down. Playmaking is up. I should say scoring creation and passing creation, as we're rebranding it here. But those are, that's still, I mean, this is the most efficient scoring season maybe in history. The overall usage isn't that high, but it's probably the greatest shooting season that anyone's ever had, just overall, when you consider anywhere on the floor, if you were to keep this up.
The difference between Jokic's simple shot quality and his actual effective field goal percentage is completely ridiculous. He's taking easier shots than Shai just because they're closer around the basket, but 74% true shooting 70% basically effective field goal percentage is wild. Like it's incomprehensible in a lot of different ways. And so and Jokic, there's no diminishing his offensive impact. And I mean, it is true that Jamal Murray is having a much better start to the season than he has his last few, and that is an important part of the story for Denver's offense. But we know who the reason for the season is with Denver, and they've had Aaron Gordon's missed a lot of time with injuries. They've been playing a lot more limited offensive players at certain moments. You know, Peyton Watson is functionally who replaced Christian Brown in the starting lineup, and they're both extremely limited offensive players. And so for the Nuggets to be at that level is truly impressive. So this is not Jokic taking a step back and giving Shai the opportunity. This is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander having that kind of all-around season. And especially for me, like when you add in, so yes, Shai has been less effective as an individual scorer, and the Thunder offense is a little bit worse, but 128 and 124 are both incredible offensive ratings with a player on the floor. And so then you get into the defense and you get into the degree of the lift. And
yeah, well, and yeah, I would also say Jokic has had much more offensive talent around him available this year than Shai has. And they have one other guy who can really dribble on the team.
The right? Thunder have played a lot with two centers. And I mean that helps their defense and it helps their possession game stuff. But in order the effectiveness of their offense, they've had not only J-Dub out, we've had extended absences for Aaron Wiggins and Kenrich Williams, like a lot of different players, and the Nuggets have had guys out too. Like this, it's not to diminish that, but it's not quite the same thing for me. And so I have them in the same tier. We don't always do tiers for early MVPs, but like I have them in the same tier. But I think it's Shai. Maybe I should put them in different tiers, but I think that does a disservice to what Jokic has done offensively.
Yeah, he has been absolutely ridiculous this year, but I don't. To me, it was a pretty clear choice. That would be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But if you needed something else right on the borderline, you can look at the clutch performance, where Jokic and the Nuggets typically are awesome. The Nuggets have already lost 2.9 more games in the clutch than would have been expected by our numbers. And those numbers account for what the score is by the time you enter the clutch. They've had a lot of kind of blown leads. I would say just overall, and so there's that aspect. I'll get into the clutch numbers a little bit more. But just overall, watching Nikola Jokic, the numbers have been unbelievable. And he hasn't had to put the hammer down every single game. And he's a little older now. He's 30. Like he doesn't necessarily need to, nor should he do that every single game. But they've kind of blown some leads. Their focus has wandered. You can't blame it all on the fact that it's all happening with him off the floor either. They're awesome when he's on the floor, but the off-floor numbers actually are not that terrible this year. It's not like they've blown all these leads when he's been off. Like there's, like -2 or something when he's off the floor generally. And I think his defense has not been as good overall. And yeah, there have been plenty of games where he goes, sir, and yeah, he's going to put up 15 assists because he's electing to pass every time. And the Nuggets offense looks really good there, but they have enough other guys to allow him to just kind of take a step back, only take the shots that he wants. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to take 7 shots today. That's fine. I might go 7-7, but I'm only taking 7 shots. He has that luxury. But I do think there has not been quite the level of consistency that Shai has had. And then if you want to get into the clutch stats for OKC, they have won 1.8 more clutch games than expected already. That's with, of course, Shai not even having to play in half of fourth quarters, right?
Right.
So notice we're not, yeah, go ahead.
And that's one other thing to mention about these resumes is that I don't like to, especially at the tippy top in the early part of the season, focus more on minutes played, but that is an important, it will be, it'll factor in when we talk about 3, 4, and 5. But Shai has also played more minutes than Jokic has. And that considering that he's also having a lot of these games that because he, like the old Steph Curry argument that they're blowing teams out so thoroughly that he doesn't have to play. He still played more minutes than Jokic.
Yeah. And Shai, his overall numbers are just ridiculous. He's scoring 35 points per 36 minutes. That's pretty close to 36 points per 36 minutes, which would be 1 point per minute. And he's got 67% true shooting, which is unbelievable for a guard. His mid-range shooting has been awesome. And then these clutch numbers too, where the Thunder, they've only lost one game, and that was in the clutch in Portland. They're 20-1. Again, say that again. The Oklahoma City Thunder are 20-1. And just because it's kind of a boring excellence or something, like this is what everyone expected for Thunder. No, nobody expected the Thunder to be 20-1, and Jalen Williams has barely played this season. They've had other injury absences too.
With a plus 17 cleaning the glass net rating, like plus 17.
Yeah, and so Shai's clutch numbers, he is the leading scorer in the NBA in the clutch. 69% true shooting on 46% usage. So he basically is it. If you watch all these games, he makes every single play in the clutch. They just make the floor flat. Maybe they'll have one guy come up and set a screen for him to try to involve another guard. And other teams can't stop it. He just kills them every single time. It's unbelievable. So to me, like his case is so awesome, and anything that you would look at as a tiebreaker to me would go in his favor. So yeah, I mean, to me, I don't know who I would take if I had to pick one player to start a team with this season, but I think on their respective teams, like Shai is just pushing the Thunder to a better performance overall. And you can build that team around him in a way that you can't with Jokic, because Jokic is I would say he's been okay defensively this year. And so that means if your center is okay defensively, you're not going to have a defense that's 5 points 100 better than the entire rest of the league. So again, this is not I'm probably appreciating Nikola Jokic's game more now than I ever have, doing that live game that we did, some of the plays he made in that Memphis game being a perfect example of that. So this is not to denigrate him in any way. It's just more that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is just so good. Like I think people really somehow, after winning a championship, largely dominating the playoffs last year as they were mostly their only consistent threat, and coming out being even better this year, and the team starting 20-1, he somehow to me is still underrated.
Yeah, I don't really have too much of an argument there. Is there anything more for this discussion? I'm pretty much.
Well, I just want to say in 95% of seasons, Nikola Jokic would be the obvious MVP so far. So this is not about Nikola Jokic denigrating him at all. It pains me even to have to try to poke holes in his case because it's made out of titanium. But that's how good Shai is.
Chase is vibranium. Yeah.
Yes. This is more about how awesome Shai is than any flaws that you're pointing to in Nikola Jokic. So there's some people who've been talking about this being a more than two-man race for MVP. Well, you can talk about the minutes with Luka and Giannis both having missed time so far. I mean, I assume that's going to be your 3 and 4.
They are, and I think it's been fairly clear that the third and fourth best players in the league when they've played have been Giannis Antetokounmpo and Luka Doncic. The fundamental question, and I don't love engaging in this in the earlier season ones, just because I don't think it's as fun of an exercise, is okay. So Giannis has played 461 minutes. Luka's played 559. Donovan Mitchell has played 652. Is Donovan Mitchell, even though he's been worse than them, how valuable is that extra 180 minutes? And it's very valuable. But I think that we're narrowing the season. Thankfully, both those guys are back too. So like if this was the end of the season, of course, I would be splitting all of those hairs. I would be trying to do everything in my power. But now I want to instead take some time to appreciate what Giannis Antetokounmpo is doing this year. I brought it before that Shai and Nikola Jokic have total creation around 50%, which is a ton. Giannis and Luka have identical 54.9 total usage. So that's another basically 5% of possessions that those two gentlemen are ending through a pass or potential assist or scoring themselves. And so Giannis is doing that. So he has a bigger role in his team's offense, in the Bucks offense, than Nikola Jokic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander do. And two huge things. One, he's been very effective himself, 67% true shooting, as he always is. But also, the Bucks, sustained by some incredible, ridiculous, unsustainable, likely three-point shooting, They have a 124.5 offensive rating. Yes, that's right. The Bucks have a better offensive rating. This is before their loss to the Wizards tonight. He had the Bucks have a better offensive rating with Giannis on the floor than the Thunder do with Shai. I'm not saying his argument he's had been as good of a player counting minutes or not counting minutes, but Giannis is having just a superlative offensive season and pairing it with the best defense he's played in at least a few years. Not to the level of when he was, defensive player of the year caliber, but still a very good defensive season.
Yeah, the numbers have ticked back up there. He's allowing 45% shooting at the rim, which is very high. That's on par with some of his best seasons. We'll see. It's early. His volume in terms of contests is not incredibly high. They largely have not played him at center either. They've pretty much played him next to Portis or Turner all year. So that has a little bit of an effect on things as well. But yeah, that number is good. We'll see, whether because the overall defensive performance when he's on the floor is not particularly enticing. It's certainly worse when he's off the floor. But yeah, I think I would probably have to go with him in the third position as well, because there is a two-way component to it, because the team has been a little bit better, again, with some unsustainable three-point shooting, even noting that these are very good three-point shooters when he's been on the floor. And he is the highest in the league, anyone that we're looking at in this group. You're going to guess who the number 2 is in on-off differential among players who've qualified?
I think I might actually know the answer. Because oh no, maybe I don't. The guy I looked at was Duran, but it might not be Duran.
No, I don't think. What's Duran's number?
Like plus 16, something in that range.
Oh no. The answer is Neemias Queta.
Woo-hoo!
Yes, the Celtics are plus 15.3 when he's on and negative 4.9.
The centerpiece, Neemias Queta.
20.2 on-off differential. But Giannis is the highest at 21.2 and has a bit more of a track record than Neemias Queta, as good as Queta has been so far this season. And yeah, I think that's the one thing that people don't quite recognize that much about Giannis, because you think of him as like, yeah, is he really one of the best offensive players in the NBA? He's kind of a one-trick pony. He doesn't really shoot outside at all. Like, how many moves does he really have? No, he just continually generates shots at the rim over and over and over again. And the rules and the spacing have gotten even more favorable to him over the years. I don't know that he's as good as he was at this, in 20 and 21 when he was unbelievable. And also had this crazy high usage as well. But yeah, like, he is able to just get to the basket and generate a billion shots and a billion fouls. And yeah, I certainly think he and Luka are in the same tier to me. Do you want to talk a little bit about Luka's case? He's actually having, I think, by far his most efficient season so far.
I brought up the total creation before. 55% basically of his team's possessions. That is, he tied with Giannis for the highest number, and the highest by a lot of anybody in this group. And the Lakers have an awesome 123 offensive rating when Luka is on the floor. And his own individual efficiency, 62% true shooting. While if we want to use basketball reference usage, 37% usage. So he's been very efficient. The team has been great. He is unbelievable at setting up roll men and three-point shooters. And the Lakers have had, like LeBron has missed basically the whole season so far. So they've still had Austin Reeves, and he will get discussed in this podcast. But they have a lot of other guys who are more play finishers. And so, the DeAndre Aytons of the world. And so he's set those guys up incredibly well when he's been on the floor, and he's been an effective scorer himself. And so I'm far more persuaded by the hyper high usage players, who have the large control, when their offense is great. And when the super high usage players, when their offense is fine, or sometimes good is kind of the borderline, well, then I'm not as persuaded by that. But Luka Doncic doesn't have that weakness, which some of the other big guys with a huge role, and he has an even larger role than all of those other people do.
Yeah, and he has a great track record too. That's another part of my criteria, is if you've been doing it for a long time, I'm comfortable with what you are. I don't feel it's as fluky. I just think you're a better player than the other guy. That does matter to me. So, and Luka, he's getting to the foul line more and actually making his foul shots 80% from the foul line. Hopefully that's something that's going to continue. But certainly he's been totally unstoppable this year. Everything that everyone has thrown at him has been completely ineffectual. And that's really without the Lakers doing a great job of shooting and finishing plays. Like their shooting from the outside up until a couple games recently has been pretty poor. And Luka is great at generating threes. Yeah, I think he's right. He's looking like he's right back at the height of his powers. Again, another guy who's playing at an MVP level. So now we get into the fifth guy. Did you tease it that it's going to be Donovan Mitchell for you?
I may have teased that, but that would be in that, like, it to me, it's there are a number of other guys who have played well. But for me, the guys, so because Stephen Curry has played very well, but he hasn't played enough. Like, he hasn't been as great as Luka and Giannis, and he hasn't played enough. So for me, the Donovan Mitchell would be the model darling for this spot, and I think that Donovan Mitchell deserves serious consideration for the spot. But the other guy that I think the models are, for whatever reason, underappreciating, in part because of his defense, which and so that is Jalen Brunson. And so Jalen Brunson, they have these Mitchell and Brunson have very similar size roles within their team's offense, 47.5 total creation. The Knicks offense is better with Brunson on the floor than the Cavs offense with Mitchell. Both players have had missing talent. Darius Garland hasn't played, but that's kind of a different thing. And they've been dealing, Jared Allen's been missing time with this finger issue and everything else. And Brunson's had a bunch of missing teammates. So I think part of the reason the models really like Donovan Mitchell, like I think Donovan Mitchell is like fifth in a lot of the like EPME type things, especially when you add in amount played, because he's been very effective as a scorer himself. 64% true shooting on this big role, and he takes more shots than Jalen Brunson does. But Jalen Brunson, to me, has been better as a creator. He is a better passer than Donovan Mitchell always has been. And so the reason that I ended up going with Mitchell over Brunson, I think those guys, their cases are very similar. I am persuaded by the Knicks offense being so much better, basically 6 points per 100 possessions better with Brunson on than the Cavs with Mitchell on, is that Donovan Mitchell, in this case, I see games played, minutes played as a real tiebreaker. Brunson's only missed a couple, but Donovan Mitchell is he's playing a lot. And so he's at 652 minutes. Brunson's at 585 minutes. That's enough of a difference where if I see it as a comparable case, I'm willing to give the edge to the other guy. And I will note that because of how I do things, I have Jalen Brunson first team All-NBA and I have Mitchell second team because I think Brunson has been a little bit better, but I'm willing to use minutes played as the tiebreaker in this case.
This is really where I got into a circumstance that I didn't find anyone's case particularly compelling for this fifth slot. And then I also didn't really think that there were guys who just had separated themselves so much even between second and third team. And I think it's just part of just how the NBA is these days, that it's not as much of a star-driven league anymore, particularly once you get below that top four. Every team kind of has a star, and a lot of it is depth and defense and offensive rebounding. Like, think about it, right? Offensive rebounding, what percentage of the game was offensive and defensive rebounding 5 years ago compared to today? Because obviously defensive rebounding is important because you're not preventing an offensive rebound that people are trying for. Well, stars largely don't play a huge part in that. Mm-hmm. And so that means if that part of the game is going to be more valuable, then stars are going to kind of be a little bit less valuable. It doesn't mean that they're not still great players, but I just have all these guards, right? Differentiating between Anthony Edwards, Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Brunson, Stephen Curry, Tyrese Maxey, Austin Reeves. It's really kind of eye of the beholder. Like, I don't really have a great feel for which of those guys are better. A lot of teams seem to have guys like that. Now, there are other guys who have different kinds of cases. And the guy who has, I think, a different kind of case that I was ultimately persuaded by, at least at this early point, we'll have to see how things play out, is Cade Cunningham. Anthony Edwards was the other guy that I considered the most there. And Cade is not as much of a darling with some of the advanced stats. He never has been unbelievably efficient. He certainly has been very solid in the clutch. Pistons have been very good in the clutch this year. that might be something where it's going to tone down. And I don't predict that Cade Cunningham will be my number 5 MVP pick at the end of the year. And he's missed a little bit of time too, but helping to get this Pistons offense to a 119 offensive rating, given the rest of their limitations. Jalen Duren is having this great year, but Cade has been a big part of that. Duren's added a little bit more self-created stuff this year, but I think and it's very exciting for his future, but that's, 3-4 possessions a game. Most of it is him getting set up, and he also really helps the Pistons offensive rebounding. And then their defense has been excellent all season. And I think the fact that Cade Edwards is a little bit different because he looks maybe better as a defensive player than he is consistently minute to minute. But Cade he provides some rim protection. He's, again, a best offensive player on the perimeter that is not someone that you're really going to succeed in attacking. I continue to find that to be more and more valuable as time goes on. So I ultimately went with Cade there, even though the overall efficiency numbers are not that great. Certainly his passing creation, 19%, is up there with just about everyone else. And he's really started to quell his turnover issues that I thought held him back by quite a bit. And so given how good Detroit has been and him deserving the lion's share of that credit, again, noting that they have a lot defense, rebounding, like these things, more of an ensemble cast. These are all bigger reasons why depth. These are reasons why teams are good, much more so than in the past. So I think he's a clear All NBA player. I don't even really feel that strongly about having him 5th in MVP and on my first team All NBA, but I didn't really think that there was that much that stood out of any of these candidates. Brunson, Mitchell, Edwards probably were right there in that mix for me too, I'd say.
It's a big kind of group there. And so, yeah, all the guys you mentioned are, and I think this, as often happens, this conversation flows into All NBA. And so you kind of, the guys that you mentioned comprise most of my second team. So just to walk through it, my top 4 are the top 4: Shai, Jokic, Giannis, Luka Doncic, in that order, if that matters to you. And then I have Brunson 5th there, but again, you could have a lot of different players in here. And then I have Steph and Cade and Donovan Mitchell, Steph Curry, who we haven't really mentioned because he hasn't played quite enough, but 44% total creation, which is high on this. And I'll believe that with Curry a little bit more than most guys due to the scheme. He actually has kind of a larger role within the offense just because of some of the other stuff that they do. Now, maybe it's giving him credit that I don't give other guys, but the Warriors offense is a little bit different. And so Steph Curry's right there, 64% true shooting on the year, but he's played too little. I didn't consider him high level for MVP because he hasn't played enough minutes. So I have basically all the guys we just mentioned. And then I don't have him on second team, but I want to mention two other guys. And the first one, just because his role is more similar to these guys. Again, I have him third team. I don't have him there. The statistical argument for James Harden as an offensive player with some of these guys is actually pretty comparable. It's fascinating because the Clippers are so bad. They've been terrible this year. And so again, I don't have him in the same level. Donovan Mitchell, let's compare James Harden and Donovan Mitchell. Similar roles within the offense. Harden's role is actually higher. And the Clippers offense and the Cavs offense are basically the same. And I would argue that Harden, it's complicated because no Ty Jerome limited Darius Garland, but the Clippers haven't had a lot of creation outside of Harden either. And so for them to be at that point, Harden has been slightly less efficient as an individual scorer, but the Clippers have been an absolute train wreck. Almost every other thing about them is going to be massively negative. I just wanted to mention it because he's more similar to these guys. I'm going to mention some players. All the rest of my guys who made an All-NBA team have very different cases. And so I wanted to mention him with these guys, along with one other that I'm sure we'll bring up, as players who have more similar cases. They have that role. They're the lead creator in their offense rather than a wing or a big or something else.
Yeah, and they're just a ton of guards who have between 60 and 63% true shooting, and their offenses are pretty good when they're on and worse when they're off. Obviously, Harden, the Clippers are 18.5 points per 100 better when he's on the floor offensively, but they're also 7 points better defensively when he's off the floor, and particularly because now they've had to play John Collins at power forward. Harden really is a power forward defensively. He's at a guard in the perimeter more. He's a huge part of their terrible transition defense.
Yeah.
And they still have a negative 2.9 net rating when he's on the floor. Given how chock full this year is, it's just really hard for me to pick someone who's the team is negative when he's on the floor, as bad as the rest of them have been. But they're not totally bereft in talent, to be sure. But his individual numbers have bounced back. If he had put up these numbers last year, I wouldn't have been complaining about him being all NBA. But
yeah.
And we'll see whether he's able to continue that. And he did not make any of my teams for the reasons I talked about.
Yeah, and that's fair. I have him third team. You know, there are a lot of players in this vicinity.
Larry Markkinen has a very kind of a similar case to him, I would say, where the Jazz are just way better when he's on the floor. Some of that's defensive, which is a little weird. Probably because he's playing more minutes with their only true centers. But again, Markkinen, you're way, way better. But when this guy's on the floor, but you're still slightly below water. Tyrese Maxey even kind of falls into that category for me too. 0.4 net rating when he's on the floor, and the overall offense is way below even like the Clippers with Harden on the floor. And I would say they've had, I don't know, everyone's been in and out. He's been a rock. He's played a billion minutes, had some nice clutch performances, but he did not make any of my teams. I think a lot of people would be surprised by that because he's had some big scoring moments and some big games. They were a great story earlier. They've kind of fallen off now. But I also just am not that much of a believer in his overall track record driving an offense. And they're guys who I think would be better. He's having a great season, probably all-star, but all NBA is a pretty high bar.
It is a high bar, but there is one more creator player that I have on an all-NBA team, and that's Austin Reeves. And
sure.
It might end up being lost a little bit because his season is going to evolve as the surrounding talent changes. Austin Reeves so far, 41% total creation. So that is in the vicinity of not the highest guys, but it's Anthony Edwards, that type of level. So Anthony Edwards is there. I think it's lower than Cade because of Cade Cunningham's passing usage, but he big role within the offense. Ridiculously effective, 68% true shooting on the year. And the Lakers' offensive rating with Austin Reeves on the floor, a little bit, just a shade under 120. And so they've been great.
He's also sixth in the entire league in EPM.
He is. And so I considered Reeves for second team. I think he deserves that consideration. And it's completely fair to argue that the player I have on the second team should be ineligible. So you could just kind of functionally put him there. And Reeves he's been fantastic. And his role, because the Lakers have gotten some of their, like Luka will hopefully play a higher proportion of the season. LeBron will almost definitely play a higher proportion of the season. His role will change, but he has been phenomenal to start the year.
Yeah, and that 68% true shooting is it's too good to ignore. And the impact stats, I really like him too. I don't know if he's going to be here at the end of the year. His role is probably going to wane a little bit with the return of LeBron as well. He actually does have a bigger defensive role than some of these guys just because the Lakers don't have anybody else. And so he's got to at least chase around shooters, if not necessarily be the primary point of attack defender. But he's even been asked to do that if it's more of a pick and roll guy. Obviously, he has his isolation limitations, but I mean, eventually I just was like, all right, I'm not picking all small. Like part of the reason I didn't go with Max is like, I'm not picking all small guards.
Nope.
On my all NBA teams. Like there are other players at other positions who are doing stuff on winning teams that I really wanted to acknowledge. And, I did have Steph Curry on my second team. I think when he's actually been available, he's been brilliant. He's missed some time, obviously. And he's just in his old age, he's not as consistent on a night to night basis. He puts up 40 in back-to-back nights against the Spurs, and then nobody notices that he was 2 of 12 against New Orleans the next night because they just didn't need him, right? Like that sort of doesn't enter the consciousness, but it is part of the record. And so I did have on my second team still. I think has still been brilliant, and he, of course, has the great track record as well. My last guy on second team All NBA was Chet Holmgren.
Sure.
Very similar case to Evan Mobley last year. The one reason I had a little trepidation about Chet was that he doesn't play that many minutes. He plays like 29 minutes a game. And I don't like OKC hasn't needed him. Now, would he have played more if they weren't blowing everybody out? Yeah, he'd probably be in the 31, 32, which is fine for a big. So I didn't give him too many demerits there. And he's been available for most of the games, but probably will be, I won't spoil it yet, but one of the candidates for Defensive Player of the Year. And also has been insanely efficient on the offensive end. And he's not still a primary scorer, but he's adding more and more in terms of his self-created stuff every year. And he's just been really efficient. So we can save some of the defensive numbers for the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. But did you have Chet Holmgren in your All-NBA team?
I had him in the also considereds, but I agree with everything you said. This group gets really tight for me. And Holmgren's, his scoring is impressive, like 65% true shooting, and it's not just dunking. He's taking almost 5 threes per 36 minutes. Like that's way over the Mendoza line that we've said over the years. And it's a weapon for the Thunder, and they've needed that because they've been playing him next to Hartenstein a fair amount.
Well, and that's the other thing too. Like his ability to be a good enough offensive player to actually play the four and make those double big lineups work with Jalen Williams, with Hartenstein, that's huge for their defense. Not only what he's doing individually, but the fact that he can hold up well enough on offense and actually be a huge positive, frankly, to then allow another big to play next to him. And now you're just completely choking off everything.
Yeah. I mean, so Holmgren, he is my last guy. And I've sometimes with these, you convince me or, in various ways or just working through it. So I think there's a chance he ends up there, but I'll run through. So the player who I have a center on my second team too. And this is the player who might not be eligible. My general rule is if you've played enough, then I don't care how many games you've missed if you've done it. And to me, Victor Wembanyama, when he's played, has been good enough to do this. I mean, he's been, to me, the best defensive player when he's played in the league. And his offense is still a work in progress. 61% true shooting for a center is not unbelievable. But he has a huge role still, 41% total creation. So in that same thing I was talking about before with Austin Reeves and with like that's the role that Victor Wembanyama, for better or sometimes for worse, he has with the Spurs. And so it's the old, we talked about him a lot and Evan Mobley a lot last year in the All-NBA, potentially in the MVP conversation. And so to me, when Wembanyama has been available, we'll talk about more of his case, assuming you considered him eligible for Defensive Player of the Year then. But to me, that combined with what he has done offensively is enough to put him here.
Yeah, playing in 12 of 19 games and also probably not going to be back for a little bit longer. It was just a little bit too, like, because that's extrapolating over the course of the year. There are so many good candidates too. And forgive me, I can't even remember what my approach was last year. Like, did I pick anybody who had played 10 games? I think I might have picked KD last year because the Suns were like 9-1 when he played and they just like lost every game without him. At the 20 game mark is usually when we first do this. I ended up leaving him out. I think had I considered him, I would have had him probably, clearly on second team All-NBA in the defensive. Actually, I do have him in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. I think it's more just that there are so many other candidates. And frankly, the Spurs have been playing very well without him too. I think there's, and now I think a lot of people have been saying the Spurs need more recognition. I'm just a little more conservative on them because they've kind of had these different phases of their season. First, there was no Fox. Then Harper went out. Then Castle and Wembanyama went out at the same time. And they've been successful in all those phases, which they deserve credit for. But I do want to see what it's going to look like when they're all together. And they've had some impressive wins, but they also have had a very, very easy schedule so far on the way to 13-6. Hopefully, Victor and Castle will be back for that quarterfinal game against the Lakers. That'll be a really nice test for them.
We both kind of have him here by acclamation, but just to have it out there for Anthony Edwards, I believe we both have him second team.
Yeah.
41% total creation, 63% true shooting. Wolves have a 120 offensive rating when he's on the floor. Like he's having a very good year. Minnesota at times has been disappointing. They're 12-8 on the year, but their differential has been good. They've underperformed it by a lot. So Anthony Edwards, this is just the level of player that he has been so far. Like, I think sometimes we spend more time picking apart the disagreements, but I think Ant just to have it out there.
Yeah, and the off the dribble 3-point shooting continues to be real. And I was talking about this. I did that show yesterday, the association, and I was talking about this with Drew Hanlon, who is on there as well, that his skill level is still a little bit in advance of the effect that he has on his offense. And Julius Randle is having a wonderful season too. He did get a ton of consideration for me because of the defense, but he certainly was someone I at least looked at to some degree. But still 40% on whatever it is, 10 threes a game is still 40% on 10 threes a game. Those go in, right? Like, and he's been part of their clutch foibles too. So I think he's right on the borderline, I would say, of being in that fifth spot for MVP or All NBA, but a few things just holding him back as of now, and just not quite as steady as Cade Cunningham, which is why I had him above there. But yeah, clear second team All NBA player. And again, I would say his efficiency, the team offense when he's on the floor, and just the overall size and athleticism that he brings, the ability to play defense when he needs to, that to not be someone who's going to get attacked. It'd be nice if he boxed out every once in a while. That's been a problem, to be sure, with guys just running right around him for easy putbacks. But I think he is definitely just a little bit of a cut above some of these other small guards. So I've got 4 slots left in guys we haven't talked about. I'm very much open to being convinced. Here's who I thought was in the mix for me. Jalen Duren, Lauri Markkanen, Harden, Alperen Şengün, KD, Jamal Murray, Jalen Johnson, Deni Avdija, Jaylen Brown, Jimmy Butler. Yeah, that's probably the list. Devin Booker and Scotty Barnes. I looked at them and I ultimately was like, nah, I don't feel that they have a case.
Yeah, it's a little too tenuous for those two guys as well. You named all the guys that I ended up picking, but it's a very good.
Yeah.
It's a
well, I'll let you fill out your field then, and I can talk through mine.
I'll do it a little bit thematically. I was persuaded by 2 wing-sized guys that have had a larger role within the offense, probably than either of them necessarily wanted, and have done reasonably well with it. And those are Jaylen Brown and Deni Avdija. So Jaylen Brown, in the absence of Jason Tatum, 48.5% total creation. So he's above the Anthony Edwards. He's above a lot of those guys in terms of role within the Celtics offense. And Joe Mazzulla does, they're not playing the spacing that they used to because they just don't have the bigs anymore. Celtics have basically a 120 offensive rating when Jaylen Brown is on the floor. And part of that is he's had to bounce back a little bit in his individual effectiveness. And part of it is, and remember, the early part of the season, both Peyton Pritchard and Derek White couldn't hit their threes. So that was a part of it. Those guys have eventually turned around, and Jaylen Brown does some other things. And it's not like he's elevating them to superhuman heights, but I think that that's kind of a part of his case. And then it's similar for Avdija. Avdija, I don't think people would want him to have as big a role within the Blazers offense, but they have Scoot's been out the whole year. Drew Holiday's missed an extended period of time now. Shaedon Sharp's missed a lot of the overlapping time. So Avdija, he has a larger role within the Blazers offense than Anthony Edwards and a lot of these other guys. And they've been a totally respectable 117. It's part because it's not always the most watchable, but Deni Avdija gets fouled more than almost everybody that we've talked about already.
Yeah.
6.8.
And it's honestly, he doesn't do that many bullshit foul drawing tricks either. He's just going hard to the rim and getting fouled a lot
and
of times.
It's to me, it's a more, I guess you could say the term that you see sometimes, like a more ethical version. Not that it's super unethical for Franz Wagner, but I think Avdija is more effective at it, and he's a better passer. Like, I think he's had some really nice passing moments, and so he's Avdija's at he's at 62% true shooting on the year. So he's doing a lot, and he's also been effective. And the team's been, when you consider who's been available for the Blazers, both just the roster and the guys who've been out, like, I think he's done a lot with not that much surrounding talent. And it's funny because both the Celtics and the Blazers, like, they're not these dominant teams. Like you could pick out a player like on the Rockets where Alperen Şengün and Kevin Durant are absolutely worthy of these selections as well. But for me, I like a heavy lift if the team is doing reasonably well when they're out there, and I think that applies to both of them.
Yeah, Braun's case flummoxed me. He also has had a pretty big defensive role because they just don't have guys who are going to guard that much on the perimeter, and they've tried to keep him out of that, but he's had to do some of it. So it's been a pretty crazy big role for him. I don't know how much this factors in, but there's been some unsustainable jump shooting, I would say, for him, and he still has not been that efficient. Now, the fact that he's taken on this role and he's also upped his playmaking and he's not turning it over nearly as much as you would have expected, given that and given some of his past history. I think that's all. And the Celtics have been maybe a little bit better than expected, although they haven't had as many injuries as a lot of teams have. So he's right on the borderline for me, but the efficiency below the league average is a little bit concerning, and some of the jump shooting is, but I don't know. I don't want to penalize him for that necessarily. I can do that next time when it reverts to the mean.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, he's right up there, and he does do more defensively than maybe some of these guys. So you mentioned Jaylen Brown. He was just outside of it for me, but I could be convinced to have him in. Let's talk about the case of Devin Booker. I think some people might be surprised to hear that neither of us really had him in there. And because the Suns have surprised, but this is one of those things where, yeah, it's because they're playing hard. It's because they have good shooting. I don't think that Devin Booker, I think his passing has been really good. I don't think his scoring has been very good. I think he's been stymied in a lot of these games. He hasn't been particularly efficient. I would say either he's taking difficult shots and not making them at a rate that's much higher than you would actually expect. Let me get the numbers on that real quick. I got to scroll way down because he has not been particularly high in the impact stats. And which is another thing I look at. It's not the only thing, but yeah, Devin Booker, his EPM is 0.9, which is just not very good.
Well, and part of the reason why, I mean, the Suns have been great is that they've impressed in the non-Booker minutes. They have a better net rating with Devin Booker off the floor than with Devin Booker on the floor. They have a better offense with Booker off the floor than with Booker on the floor. And so
and surely there's shooting luck involved in that. But so here's the number I was looking for though. His shot quality is 49% and his field goal percentage is 50%. So that's just not very good. Like 50% field goal is well below the league average. Now, his true shooting is pretty much right at the league average because he does get to the foul line some, and he has been a good playmaker. But I just don't think that he's been, and his leadership has been good. His defense has been part of a good defense for sure. And Phoenix had another really nice win tonight against the Lakers. I'm still just not a believer in what he's been as a scorer. Like he just is not the same level of player that he used to be as a scorer. And so I think I really like what Phoenix is doing. I've been enjoying it a ton, but to me, there have just been other reasons for their success, not necessarily Devin Booker.
Agreed.
Yeah. And then Scotty Barnes, the Raps are 14-7. He's probably been their best player. I think that's just been really an ensemble group. They've won a lot of close games. So some of their fundamentals are not as good. Just not quite there for me as well. The guy we haven't talked about yet is Jalen Johnson, who I do actually have on the third team. I feel I almost felt myself devolving into this is a good team. They need a player trope. But ultimately, that's what I ended up using to separate some of these guys. Because Jamal Murray and Alperen Şengün are the other two guys who are on my team too, along with Avdia. And, Avdia is a little bit different because this team's not winning that much. But I think he's just been so dominant as an offensive player that I didn't really have much of a choice but to put him on there, in my opinion. Jalen Duren was the other one guy that I considered too, but he just doesn't, I don't really feel him all that much as a creator. And I think He doesn't play all that much. He gets in foul trouble a lot. I'm just not like he's just on the borderline for me too. But again, I'd say there's like 25 qualified candidates here for this third team. So
I had Duren in and Şengün out, but it's a close call.
Yeah.
I mean, part of it is just that he's been so much more effective as an individual scorer. I mean, 70.3% true shooting for Duren and 57.3 for Alperen Şengün. The Rockets offense has been better with him on than actually they haven't. The Pistons offense with Jalen Duren on has been a shocking 121.6. And Kate Cunningham deserves a lot of credit for that, of course. But Duren has the bigger on-off offensive differential than Cade. And Duren, he's the other thing, he's not like, I don't think he's the same level of defender as some guys, but he's good enough that he's been a positive, I would say, in that space. He's contesting 26% of shots. We're not getting all the way into that. So like Şengün, I think that I like the idea of Şengün better. It's like if Şengün ever put together,
I'm like last year, I thought Şengün should not have made the All-Star team, and he got on because the Rockets needed someone. Now they're just too good, though. They actually do need someone on All NBA. They're the second best team in the NBA. For them to not have anyone on All NBA, and Şengün is a huge part of how they play too. He's big. Mm-hmm. The fact he's another guy where he can now play in these double big lineups because he has the skill level to handle the ball up top. And I would like it if you were a little bit more efficient individually. But I still. He's become a quality defensive player as well. He can't really be attacked there anymore. He's a huge part of what makes this team what they are and their identity. They just wouldn't be the type of team that they are without the role that he plays and the way that he plays it. In a way, I think even more so than Kevin Durant, who also I very seriously consider. I think Kevin Durant is really good. I think we've been disagreeing about him over the last year and a half or so. I think I've had him on teams when you've had him off most of the time. So I think I ultimately had to go with Şengün, though. I think he's just been so core to what they're doing that it's hard to leave him off, even if they're better when he's off the floor than when he's on. But when he's on, they still have a 10.3 net rating.
They're really, really good. And Şengün, like it really is just him making a few more twos, probably is always it. But his importance to the Rockets, I really like that you brought that argument out because he's been very important for what they do. And I mean, KD has raised their offensive floor as well. He's normal efficiency, 62%, smaller role within the offense than a lot of these other guys. And KD I think of him as a capable defensive player, but it's not a huge plus for him the way it has been for the way it is for some other guys. So it's like, I think KD is totally worthy. Like he's, as you said, it's a group of like 25 guys in the overall All NBA conversation. So he's firmly within that for me, but I ended up being more persuaded by the guys who are doing a little bit more Jaylen Brown, Denny Avdia than KD.
Yeah. I think I am going to take Jalen Johnson off though, as I've really gone through, like Jalen Johnson's playmaking has been pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, 7.5 assists per 36 minutes is awesome.
Yeah, and the value of having someone who can handle the ball that much at that size just makes the rest of your team work exceedingly well because they have been fine without Trae Young. I mean, Alexander Walker's been good, of course, in the backcourt, but without Johnson's passing and playmaking, they really would be in an untenable situation. However, his individual numbers are just not quite good enough to me, and they're better actually when he's off the floor at this point in time. I still don't think he's a dominant scorer, and that's part of this too. So I think I'd probably put Jaylen Brown on and take him off.
Plus, I already had two Jalen's on my third team. I couldn't really add a third, but I think that Jalen Johnson.
Well, I'm replacing a Jalen with a Jalen.
Okay.
Just adding an extra letter. What about Jamal Murray? Have we gone through your entire team?
We have. We've gone through. So Jamal Murray, he's been efficient this year, 61% true shooting on 43% total creation. So his volume is in that range, but it's always hard for me when you're clearly not the best offensive player on your team and the other guy is, and so Jamal Murray is closer to All NBA right now than I'm trying to think of if he's ever been this close for me to making it. But it's always so hard, and maybe it's a little bit unfair, but we know that he's not the focal point. It's just like, can you imagine like another Warrior having an offense only case to make an All NBA team instead of like it's Jokic is that guy.
Well, their offense is unbelievable, and Murray has basically been playing every game, right? Like, the reason they have a 128 offensive rating with Jokic on is not just because of Jokic.
True.
Like, I mean, with Murray on, it's 128.4, and he's still playing a lot without Jokic, too. And I think there's a couple of things that I would point to with Murray. Like, his self-created stuff is looking pretty good. Like, his shot quality is actually pretty bad, 50%, just about the same as Booker's. But his field goal is 57%. So he's adding 7 percentage points over his shot quality, which I think he was not doing as much. His self-created three-pointers are up. And that's the other thing, too. Shooting 41% from three is really impressive. And he's having a pretty darn good playmaking season as well, as 16% passing creation. I think that with as dominant as Denver's offense has been, I felt comfortable having him here because he does fit in seamlessly with Nikola Jokic. Jamal Jokic is a pretty good player too. And that's some of these other guards would not fit in as well, right? Like, the Nuggets are better with Jamal Murray than they would be with Jalen Brunson, I think, playing with Jokic. Because
I think so. It's an interesting point. I mean, theoretically, the non-Jokic minutes would be better, but yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, and now I have Jalen Brunson higher than I do Jamal Murray. But yeah, I mean, I feel bad about leaving out KD. I feel bad about leaving out Jalen Johnson. So bad that I originally had him on my team. I feel bad about leaving off Maxey, Markkanen, Harden, Franz Wagner, who we haven't even really talked about yet. It has been really good this year. Even Evan Mobley has still been a very good player, even if he hasn't been anywhere close to where he was last year. And the competition is just way hard because remember, by the end of last year, all these people had dropped out by not making the 65 game rule, and the Cavs were unbelievable, and they're just not this year. So,
yeah.
Jimmy Butler has an amazing statistical case. Just having watched him as much as I have, I just don't. I can't quite get on board with the idea that he's been one of the 15 best players in the NBA.
Same.
All right, we did it. So let's just go through our group one more time. I have Shai, Jokic, Giannis, Luka, and Cade on my first team, and you replaced Cade with Jalen Brunson.
Yeah.
Your second team?
Stephen Curry, Cade Cunningham, Victor Wembanyama, Donovan Mitchell, Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, I did not include Wembanyama because I thought he just hadn't played enough for this particular award given the competition. Edwards, Mitchell, Brunson, Curry, Chet Holmgren. Third team for you?
Austin Reeves, James Harden, Jaylen Brown, Jalen Duren, Denny Avdia.
Yeah, and I had... So you didn't have Holmgren at all. That's right. So
no,
I had Reeves.
You talked about all the guys you felt guilty about not including. The only guy I felt guilty about was Chet Holmgren.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel guilty about not including them, but I also don't feel like they had an obviously better case than the guys that I had in. So it's if I'm splitting hairs, picking one guy or the other doesn't make me feel bad. It's particularly when generally I think I pick guys who are on more successful teams than the guys that I've left off, with apologies to KD on that. Probably most of anyone. Yeah, so I've got Reeves, Avdia, Jaylen Brown, Jamal Murray, Alperen Şengün on my third team. You want to do defense? Let's just do defensive player of the year now. That's probably the hardest other one that we have to discuss. So let's just bang it out.
To me, there are 4 high-level candidates, and there are 2 that are kind of higher-level candidates of those 4. I'll just name all 4 of them in no particular order. Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren of the Thunder. Victor Wembanyama and Rudy Gobert. I took the lead on MVP. I'm going to let you take the lead on Defensive Player of the Year because this is tough.
Yeah, Wembanyama, if he'd played enough, would have been at the top for me. As I think, if he plays 65 games, he will be my Defensive Player of the Year. I'd be shocked if that weren't the case. But I had him third because of the games played stuff. So it came down to two guys for me, Rudy Gobert and Chet Holmgren. Hartenstein to me is just not, he's a good player and some of the numbers are good, but he's a quality defensive center. And just as I watch him, I don't feel his presence the way I do Holmgren. And surely there's so many awesome players on OKC. We won't do our all defense teams until the end of the season, but certainly all of these guys are going to be featured very prominently in that. I ultimately went with Rudy Gobert, and I thought that he had a very underrated season a year ago because the Wolves, the narrative was that they weren't playing that well. And then by the end, much of the talk was about Ant and DiVincenzo and Randall playing well, but the Wolves weren't so unbelievable as they had been 2 years ago with Rudy Gobert on the floor defensively. Still pretty darn good. I think they're like a 107 last year or something like that. And they're right in that range again with Rudy Gobert. And quite frankly, it's him and Jaden McDaniels. And that's it. And you want to look at the on-off. He is other than the immortal Neemias Queta, he is the leader in defensive on-off. Now, I care much more about the on than the off in that regard. And yeah, 106.6 defensive rating, which would lead the league in a mortal league where the Oklahoma City Thunder didn't exist. Pretty incredible there. Chet, a ridiculous 101.7 defensive rating for the Thunder when he's on the floor.
I've got a stat for you. This extends to the fourth guy in my thing. Isaiah Hartenstein, they have a 102.2 defensive rating when he's on the floor, but opponents are shooting 41.7% on threes when Hartenstein's on the floor. So that number is maybe unsustainably strong. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, and he hasn't played that many minutes either. He's going to miss a couple weeks now with the soleus. That wouldn't have factored in for me. But yeah, just to me, because Hartenstein, he's not playing as much. I'm not 100% sure of this, but in the Thunder games I've watched, Chet's playing a lot more with Jalen Williams, and Hartenstein's playing a lot of his minutes with Chet. Maybe that can't be true.
So
they're playing about the same number of minutes.
Chet Holmgren's versatility is a part of what put him over Hartenstein for me, beyond the fact that I believe he's a better defensive player overall, is that when Hartenstein's on the floor, he's largely functioning as the five. And Chet Holmgren is doing what he's doing, 34% contest rate, 51% on the shots he contests, playing part as the four and part as the five. It's a variant on the argument in favor of Evan Mobley last year. It's that he's as good as Hartenstein is at the thing that Hartenstein does, but he's also good at this other thing that Hartenstein can't do. Now, Isaiah Hartenstein,
I'd say he's better as a rim protector than Hartenstein. Also, I don't think Hartenstein is that good of a post defender either. The overall activity level and the fronting of the post, like Isaiah Hartenstein is not going to guard Nikola Jokic. They have to put somebody else on him. They tried him some in the playoffs last year, but he's just not that great in the post. So, great defensive rebounder. He's been huge for them there. And he's mostly a drop center, but he can certainly execute any coverage that you need other maybe than switching, where he could be okay switching, but Chet, I think, is very good there. So to me, Chet is the guy on this OKC defense. But ultimately, Gobert, his numbers were just too good to ignore because he really suppresses what the opponents are doing at the rim. And when they are getting there, allows 49% shooting. So that's one of the best numbers. Anytime you're below 50% there, that is a extremely awesome number.
And the on-off is, part of that is just the insufficiency of the replacements. But Gobert also a lower proportion of opponent shots overall when he's on the floor inside 4 feet than Holmgren, 26.8 versus 27.6, both of which are extremely low. So Gobert, he's contesting a few fewer shots, but opponents are making less of them. And he's playing with, as you mentioned, much worse surrounding talent. So I have Wembanyama 1. I mean, I think that for me, it's if you're eligible, then you're eligible, and so I don't consider that kind of stuff. And 40% contest rate.
Well, worth noting that he has not played a high enough percentage of games to be eligible. If this were the end of the season, he would
Correct.
not be eligible.
Yeah, and that's fair. Like I'm totally, for me, it's more like if you're, I think he's done enough for me in this standpoint. The other thing I'll mention, well, I'm sure, hopefully, Wembanyama will play enough that we talk about. The one other thing I want to mention just briefly on him, the Spurs are 89th percentile in defensive rebounding when Wembanyama's on the floor. That's actually meaningfully better than the Wolves are with Gobert on the floor. Surrounding talent does matter some, but it's not like the Spurs are playing big at the 3 and the 4, generally speaking, relative to some of these teams. And like I believe that's better than the Thunder with their bigs too. So that's impressive.
Apologies to Draymond Green, who has another ridiculous on-off differential defensively. 104.6 defensive rating when he's on the floor, 119.6 when he's off. That's 15. Victor's is 14.8 in that number. But yeah, it's a pretty good group, I would say. The other guy there are two other guys that I really did want to talk about some. One is Bam Adebayo, who ho-hum, the Heat are just the number 3 defense again. Bam Adebayo, yeah, he's actually having a better rim protection season than he does sometimes, but he doesn't still contest that many shots. He's playing more of the 4 at this point in time, but the on-off numbers are very good. 107 defensive rating when Bam Adebayo is on the floor. So certainly, given the Heat's overall defensive performance, they're 7 points per 100 better when he's out there. He deserves to be part of this as well. And his defensive EPM is right up there with some of these other guys, too. Gobert is 2.7, Wembanyama 2.5, Hartenstein 3.2, Draymond is 2. So Bam is right in that mix as well. Neemias Cat is 2.8.
A non-Thunder high defensive EPM.
And then the other guy, generally we don't talk about perimeter guys that much, but Amen Thompson statistical case is also really good in terms of the on-off stuff. He hasn't been doing as much as he usually does as a rim protector because they've been playing so much bigger. KD now is basically playing more power forward, so he's been out top more. But the Rockets are 14.5 points per 100 better when he's on the floor, and they're a top 5 offense and defense. And 106.6 when he's on the floor is really, really good. And he also is playing a billion minutes too. He's playing more minutes than all these guys, 36 minutes a game. Basically doesn't miss time throughout the season. I will note, by the way, Dyson Daniels, once again, Hawks better when he's off the floor defensively. Just something to note for the guy who was number 2 in Defensive Player of the Year last year. That's why he's not being included in this analysis, really. All right, so your top 3 were Wembanyama.
Number 2, Gobert. Number 2, Gobert. Number 3, Chet Holmgren.
Okay. And I had Gobert, Holmgren, and Wembanyama. Let's do Coach of the Year. We'll break it up, go a little different direction here.
Oh, as often, a lot of great coaching jobs this year. And I try not to focus as much on there will be coaches whose teams have defied overall expectations or my own specifically, like Darko Rajakovic. The Raptors are way better than I thought they would be, and he deserves serious consideration for this. The Lakers have been better even despite their absences, so I think Redick has done an impressive job. So, I mean, there are a lot of other coaches that we can. I'm sure you'll mention some, but for me, including Rajakovic, I think there's a top 4 and then I think that almost any configuration of them would be worthy. All of them would be worthy of number 1. The first one I want to talk about is Erik Spoelstra, who, it's funny, before the year, I brought him up just because I think he's the best coach in basketball. It's like, and you're like, oh, what was the last time he had a really good coaching job? Well, now the answer is at least so far this year, because not only did the Heat change around their offense, I think those changes are has made them able to survive the stretch that they had without particularly Tyler Hero. But
stretch without Bam too.
Bam,
they were totally good.
Reviving players like Jaime Jaquez, who had a brutal sophomore year. I mean, weaponizing Simone Fontecchio, And so
Davion Mitchell, some of it was last year, but he's emerged into a starting level of point guard with them when he was pretty much unplayable at any point in his career before that.
Got dumped by the Kings.
Dumped by the Raptors too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so to get that and a starting guard. So he's definitely in this top 4. I already brought up Darko Rakovic. The Raptors being top 10 on both offense and defense is way, way beyond what I expected. I know you were higher on them. Then
I mean, not that much higher. I think they're actually way over their heads right now, although they are missing RJ Barrett. But they had been, up until then, the only guy who'd missed any time for them at all was Pirtle. And since Barrett went down, they've kind of been struggling, actually. But
then the other one, I don't want to normalize. You and I try to fight this. Oh, that team's really good. Oh, that team won the championship. The Oklahoma City Thunder have a plus 17 clean the glass net rating without their second best player for almost the entire season. Mark Daigneault, their defense, we generally think coaches have more of an impact on defense. Well, they have the greatest defense so far relative to their peers of any team in NBA history. So I think that I would have no problem with Daigneault winning.
I don't know. Is that true? I think some of those Celtics teams might be better.
They might have.
But they're definitely, it's definitely, right up there. It's in the modern era. This is the best statistical start to a season we've seen defensively.
And then the other person who is actually my number 1 is JB Bickerstaff. And I love, funny because Doc Rivers has never been my favorite, but I do love when a team is really shorthanded and puts it together. And that stretch for Bickerstaff when they kept on winning despite Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren and Tobias Harris being out, that is special stuff. And I think that the Pistons, they've consistently bought in defensively. They're number 2 in clean the glass defensive rating right now. And they have very good defensive personnel, but they're also top half of the league in offense. And they've had all these player absences and they've been figuring things out. And I think that their groceries, like losing Malik Beasley, their groceries are different than last year. And I think in some ways they're harder to manage. And he's done a fabulous job.
Let me ask this. Who's a better coach, Mark Daigneault or JB Bickerstaff?
Daigneault.
Okay. So why is he not ahead of JB Bickerstaff then?
Because I think that Bickerstaff's had a harder job to do. And I think he's done it extremely well. I have no problem with
a harder job to do in the sense of keeping above water or whatever. But I mean, the Thunder, all right, the Thunder, I would predict they would have been 15 and 6, 14 and 7 with no J-Dub to start the year. And instead they're just completely destroying people. And Mark Daigneault, again, they don't have a lot of veterans on this team. They never make mistakes. If you watch them, they never make defensive mistakes. They always play hard at all times. And it's just, it's remarkable. I think he's a better coach than JB Bickerstaff, and they're 20-1. They're having one of the best seasons in NBA history. What else does the guy have to do other than the fact that he won? Other than the fact that he already is one coach of the year, what else does the guy have to do?
I moved him from 2 to 1. You convinced me. It wasn't a hard convincing job, but yeah, I mean,
they're gonna win if they win 74 games. It's just still not gonna fucking win coach of the year. It's unbelievable. JB number 2. I mean, there are a lot of great coaching performances so far this year, and I think the league is at a moment in time where things are changing a lot, and what wins basketball is changing a lot. And we saw it last year in the playoffs with the Pacers and the Thunder and the success of Houston as well. There are just more ways to win a basketball game now than I think there were 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. And that's massive. That is really incredible. And there are great moments for coaches to make a difference. You mentioned Spoelstra. The one thing I'll add is part of why they have the number 3 defense is because he's been able to get a lot out of guys who are probably more defensive players by utilizing what they do well, which is just being big and strong and going right through people and playing really fast. And that's so the fact that he hasn't had to go to more offensive guys, they don't have that many of those. And we'll have to see what happens when Hero comes back. He and Powell together could compromise this great defensive start that they've had. But to find a way to making them this viable offensively also allows their defense sing with because the offense is still working with defensive personnel. Spoelstra, what he's doing with Khalil Ware has been amazing of late as well. Other guys that you haven't talked about that much yet, Mitch Johnson.
Yep.
It was kind of low on him. You know, I had not felt like they had the best offense. I think their offense actually looked really good, particularly when since Victor went down. Their defense is solid. Getting Sean Sweeney in there to help him, I think, was really good. Also, he's added some of the defensive rebounding, that goes back to the Popovich era, them being great on the defensive glass. And their transition defense is also really good. I think that's another hallmark of coaching. Another thing Mark Daigneault does amazingly well is getting them to play great transition defense. Joe Mazzulla, Celtics being a top 5 offense is pretty good, considering who they have. Jordan Otts, just completely changing the culture in Phoenix from a bunch of just overpaid guys who weren't trying hard enough to being maybe the hardest playing team in the NBA. Has been fantastic. Ime Udoka, Houston being this good on offense, the way he's integrated Reed Shepherd, kind of didn't give him a choice, but that'll come up maybe in the executive of the year. I don't know how much you wanted to play Reed at the start, but now he's entrenched, and the double big has worked sometimes. Other times it hasn't as well, but then he has also gotten a lot out of Josh Okogie. Like Houston's actually had a fair number of injuries lower down in the chain. They missed KD for this personal absence. He just kept rolling right along, 2 wins there too. So he's got to be in this. You mentioned Redick already.
I'm not saying he deserves. I'm saying he deserves this consideration, but I want to mention Charles Lee playing 3 rookies and being not a disaster. Now, those 3 rookies have been meaningfully better than most rookies are, and we'll get to that soon enough. But that I think that's an accomplishment.
Yeah. The Hornets are starting to fall off at least a little bit, but we'll have to see how his relationship with LaMelo Ball evolves. But yeah, getting some good play out of those guys is good. So ultimately, Mark Daigneault number 1, JB number 2. I don't only go with just who I think the best coaches are. There is something to this year performance. Like I haven't had Spo in my top 3 the last few years, even though I've been really high on him. But I think him reorienting this team, that I have a number 3 as well. But I think certainly Udoka and Mitch Johnson would probably be the 2 other ones that I would have had in consideration for the top 3. But and if the Raps keep this up, Darko Rajakovic will be there. I think they've just been playing a little over their heads in the clutch right now. All right, let's get to 6th man of the year, or as I like to call it, ranking players 100 through 105 in the NBA.
It does feel
it's
that
kind of
way,
a weird award,
especially when you consider that there aren't a lot of the kind of our classic favorite of the guys who come off the bench, but they definitely should close, and all the kind of some of the favorites. They aren't always like that this year. But there are some strong cases, and instead of for some of these, I've done here are the guys that are contending, because it's probably a surprise to some people. I'm just going to start with my number 1, and that's Reed Shepherd. Reed Shepherd, who has only, I believe, he's only started 3 games now, and he's been fantastic for the Rockets offensively. 28% total creation. That isn't super high relative to the Anthony Edwards of the world, but you don't see that off of a bench very often. The Rockets offense, when he has been on the floor, has been electric. 123.1. That is significantly better than when he sits. And surrounding talent gets complicated with Reed Shepherd, especially because he started some games. He's been effective himself. 63% true shooting. And he's really out shooting his overall shot quality, which is really impressive. So it's not the classic Andre Iguodala case, guy who comes off the bench and is obviously a part of their closing 5, but that has happened at times because he's been that damn good.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens when they start to get closer to hole, but I mean, he's been pretty brilliant so far. And you mentioned his shot making. Reed Shepherd, 45% from three, taking 8.5 for 36, and his shot quality is 51.5%, field goal 61.7%. So he's adding over 10 points to the quality of shots that he's taking of field goal percentage. That's pretty impressive. His turnovers have toned down. The one thing we haven't seen much of from him is the playmaking, only 8.2% passing creation. So that is basically what percentage of the time that you're on the floor do you throw a pass that leads to a shot for your teammates. But I don't have any arguments against Reed. I think the other guys that I had in this group, AJ Mitchell, Alex Caruso only plays 18.8 minutes a game, but his on-court net rating is 29.2. They have a 95 defensive rating when Alex Caruso is on the floor and 124 on offense as well. So yeah, even with the mighty Thunder, his on-off is plus 19.3. They are 19.3 points per 100 possessions by when he's on the floor. So even with him only playing 15 games and 19 minutes a game, I still had to pick him number one. Okay. I think my discussion with Jerry Engelman gave me, I'm still not as far where Jerry is of him being a top 15 defender of this century, but especially because of the minutes issue. He's never played that many minutes, but he's just such a game changer when he comes in. And he's not shooting it particularly well this year, but obviously he's not messing up their offense in any way because he is able to move the ball. He's been at least aggressive shooting the three, shooting 35%, 6.1 per 36. So that's good enough there too. So he's my number one. Who else did you have in the mix for you?
Jaime Jaquez has done a nice job for the Heat. He actually has a larger role within the Heat offense than a lot of these guys do. The Heat offense has been worse when he's been on the floor than when he's been off, but that often happens for bench guys. AJ Mitchell, you already mentioned. Jeremy Grant, I mean, he's cooled off a little bit after the incredible start that he had, but Jeremy Grant's been effective coming off the bench for the Portland Trailblazers. And then, but the guy who I have number 3, so I have Caruso second, is Colin Gillespie. And Gillespie, who is so good that he is now starting, so he may be ineligible for this at a later point in the year. I think he's the key to that I brought up before, like an argument against Devin Booker for All NBA, is that the Suns have been way better in the non-Booker minutes than I expected, than a lot of people expected. And I think Gillespie's been the key to that. He's been having the ball in his hands a lot. 31% total creation is extremely high for a bench player. And the Suns have been relatively effective. 116 offensive rating when you consider who he's on the floor with. I think that's totally respectable. And so I think that it's, to be Reed Shepherd and Caruso are like, they're better than him. But I think I like Gillespie's case better than I like AJ Mitchell's, better than I like Jeremy Grant's, better than I like Josh Hart's or Jaquez.
My number 2 guy, there are two, and again, you and I are just coming up with guys who aren't even in the top 3 for various reasons, because all these guys are so close to one another. And I have a list of 20 guys that would be totally reasonable at this point in time, because we don't just limit it to big scores. Ayo Dosunmu is a solid defensive guard. He's already played 456 minutes. And he has 66% true shooting, 20% usage. Does a little bit of playmaking as well, but he can get to the basket. He's making the three and is huge as far as the way that the Bulls push the pace. I had to go with my number 2. That's a pretty damn good statistical resume right there for a guy coming off the bench, particularly one who is going to close a lot for them too.
The Bulls have been better with Dosunmu on the floor than when he's been off. They're not as strong in either of those things as they were at the start of the year. But yeah, I mean, Dosunmu's been great.
Yeah. Other guys you got to talk about, Quentin Grimes.
Sure.
Onyeka Okongwu is technically eligible. He's started 9 of 20 games. Porzingis now has missed 3 straight with an illness. I'm guessing it's the same thing that he was dealing with last year. Again, there's been no clarity on this, no reporting on this. I don't think Porzingis has been asked about it. I don't know if anyone's had access to him, but this is his third time missing time. So I think Okongwu may end up being ineligible here. The eligibility is whether you start half your team's games or not. Steven Adams has also been absolutely brilliant at having one of the best offensive rebounding seasons of all time. Jaquez was in the mix for me too. Mitchell was in the mix for me too. I didn't have Gillespie there. Just having watched him breaking down the film, he's a good story, but I just don't think he's as good a player as some of these guys that I'm talking about. Let's see, who else did I have those in the mix? Grant also certainly has had a nice bounce back year. Isaiah Stewart, always someone that I'm excited about, allowing 46% shooting by opponents at the rim. He's outside of Caruso, he's probably the best defensive player who comes off the bench. Yeah, so I said a lot of names, a lot of guys who have been really good. Cam Spencer has been excellent as well. I think he's eligible still. Let me make sure of that. But yeah, was there anyone else you wanted to shout out?
I think that's a pretty good job. Cam Spencer. Yes. Oh, Cam Spencer is absolutely eligible. He's only started
one game. You never know with. I think we watched the game that he started. That's probably what it was. I was like, oh, is he? or we did it for the strategy stream. So I'm going to go Caruso 1, Dosunmu 2, Okongwu 3. I think he's been so important. His shooting has been so important to what the Hawks are doing. He hasn't been a great statistical rim protector, but his ability to switch is really important because they have all these guys now who are big without Trae Young. And if you didn't have a center who could switch, all that would break down. But there are so many awesome guys. I think having great bench performances this year. I mean, I imagine Jaquez is going to get the hype for it. If you asked most people, he would probably be the guy. But no, he's not better than Alex Caruso. If you tried to trade Alex Caruso for Jaime Jaquez, the Oklahoma City Thunder would not be particularly interested in that.
Even with some of the not deficiencies, but relative deficiencies that they've had in terms of second unit creation, they still wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Rookie of the year?
Stronger. I mean, you and I both were intrigued by this rookie class, but stronger class than maybe would have been expected at certain points in time.
Stronger by the eyes than the stats, I would say, which is always the case, right? Oh man, this rookie class, these guys are flashing, it looks unbelievable, and you're like, oh yeah, there's one rookie with a positive EPM.
and that rookie is my number one, Con Knipple. Yeah. And Con, 63% true shooting on 29% total creation, which is a strong number for a rookie to have. There are rookies with higher numbers, but Knipple's been really effective. He's 41% on 9 threes per 36. That is great volume for him. And, has some young guy stuff. He turns the ball over a little more than you'd like, but he's had the ball in his hands more than some. And yes, the Hornets have a better offensive rating when he's off the floor than when he's on the floor. Who gives a crap? Con Knipple's number one by, and I would say it is by a lot, but that's not to denigrate the other guys. He's been excellent.
Yeah, I mean, he's just one of the best rookie shooters to ever play at this point in time, and hopefully he will keep it up. But yeah, I mean, the guy's shooting 41% on threes, 9.0 per 36, 63% true shooting. A rookie perimeter player, he doesn't have the absolute highest usage, but a rookie perimeter player who's that efficient, you just don't see that at all. And I think he's been adequate defensively. The Hornets are not a defensive juggernaut, but for this player type, he's been better than average. So I don't think he's going to win it for me. I don't think he's a better prospect than Cooper Flagg. I think Cooper Flagg is going to play better than Con Knipple the rest of the year now that Dallas is using him in a sane way. However, Knipple has been better than Flagg. I generally will do a tie break to the player that I think is the better prospect. When I say rookie of the year, that I think that's part of what that award is about.
It's the old Brogdon Embiid thing.
Yeah. But Knipple has been better enough than Flagg that I feel comfortable with him here. if it were the end of the season, I might, and it really came to nut cutting time, I'd probably still pick Cooper Flag, even if their resumes were about the same. But for right now, Knipple, I wanted to acknowledge his contributions. Flag's number 2 for me, very clearly. And then the other candidates were Cedric Coward, VJ Edgecombe, Derek Queen. Those are probably the only ones that are really up there at
I
this
have one
point in
more,
time. Kalkbrenner?
Kalkbrenner. Yeah. I mean, Kalkbrenner, he has less to do than a lot of these guys. You know,
he's just too insignificant for me to consider in rookie of the year with as many good guys as there have been.
So for me, I have Kalkbrenner 4th. I have Flag 3rd, and I have Cedric Coward 2nd. Because I acknowledge what Flag has done. But the thing that Kalkbrenner, the reason you mentioned, and I think this is fair, that he's been he's insignificant on offense, but he's been significant for them on defense. I mean, he's contesting 32% of shots. 58% allowed is that's a better percentage, so meaning worse rim protection than some guys. But I think he's been important in some of those elements for him. I think the Hornets off defense has been better, way better with him on the floor, and it's been a little bit of stress. So I wanted to mention Kalkbrenner as a to give him some flowers, even if it's not he hasn't been amazing.
Yeah, back to Flag. He's played a ton of minutes. Hasn't gotten hurt yet. The big problem for him is he's shooting 25% from 3 right now. I think his inside the arc game has been getting better and actually looks pretty good. The other thing too is he just, even despite the fact that he played point guard, he just hasn't passed the ball all that much. He hasn't had guys to pass to when he was the point guard necessarily. The spacing was awful. I think letting him focus more as a guy who's going to attack the basket and play off of that and not have to just bring the ball up, set the team up, I think is going to continue to be really good for him. And so he's underperformed his shot quality, but the big reason for that is the 25% from 3. Now, hopefully that's going to come along. I think it probably will, but I think he's not taking as many of them. The other reason the impact stats he's lower is these numbers think that he's bad on defense, and I just don't agree with that. Now, the numbers you cited very early in terms of his rim protection have gone south. However, he's still, I think, is a quality defensive player. So, yeah, he's I don't know if he's a winning player every night, but he definitely is someone who is capable of helping the Mavs win games when he is playing well. And Coward had to be my last guy. He wouldn't be my top prospect here. I mean, Dylan Harper, I still would probably actually be here if he hadn't injured his calf. He's only played 9 games because he missed a couple at the start of the season too, I think. And then, or wait, I can't remember. Maybe he actually made his debut in preseason. Derek Queen, the overall numbers have not been that efficient. He had one of the worst games I've seen any player have against Golden State on Saturday, where he just, every single time he came down, he would try to go one-on-one and throw it off the corner of the backboard, missed about 8 defensive rotations in a row, and basically was just sat on the bench immediately by James Borrego the rest of the way. So certainly there have been some big moments from Queen. His passing, he's had some big scoring games. Now that Zion's back, frankly, I think that's kind of messing with his mojo a little bit. And also, he's not good at defense. And so I think Ace Bailey is, once he's been moved in the starting lineup, he's actually been playing a lot better. I guess the guy that people would probably be surprised to not see in our top 3, which I don't think he is VJ Edgecombe.
It's the start of the year versus the entirety of the year issue. I mean, VJ, he had this great beginning. It's a little bit somewhat like Stephon Cass last year, 50.5% true shooting for Edgecombe. There are years where the energy he provides on in transition, everything else would be enough, but there are guys with actual cases this year who have this. So I think Edgecombe's a great story. I think he'll be a better player than I projected as a prospect, but he had that strong stretch at the beginning has not been reflective of the overall resume so far.
Yeah, the 3-point percentage has come down. That's 36%. Where he really has struggled is inside the arc, and he's underperforming his shot quality by quite a bit. Doesn't really play make, doesn't really get to the line. Now, the one thing you could say is that they're plus 3.0 when he's on and negative 7.1 when he's off. So I think he definitely has been helping them. I would say there's a reason, like Nick Nurse is not an idiot. They have been shorthanded in some of these games, but he's playing him 36 minutes a game for a reason. It's not just because he got drafted number 3. It's like because he actually thinks that PJ Edgecombe can help. Also, they just don't have any kind of athleticism on the perimeter aside from him. So he does fulfill an important role. Like I'm not going to look at, his true shooting is bad. He hasn't been an effective player. But also, I just think these other guys have been better. That's really what it is. He would be a totally reasonable choice for being in the top 3 to be even simply playing 37 minutes a game on a team that's not bullshit is top 3 in most of the years, but not this one. Sophomore of the year.
I would say that overall, it was a rookie class that we weren't high on and then didn't really deliver as much. And some of the guys at the very top of it haven't had great starts. That doesn't foreclose them doing better in the future. My number 1 my top 2 in best sophomore are the top 2 on my board originally, but they weren't necessarily over the entirety of last year, but in the opposite order. And I believe the order you had them. I have Reed Sheppard number 1, Alex Sarr number 2.
Yeah, Sheppard, we talked about his case in 6th man. I would have him number 1 also. And then the rest of the group, Sarr has made some real strides, I think. The Wizards have been a little more competitive lately, more really with their veterans coming along than that Sarr wasn't playing particularly well. Why don't you make the case, actually, for Sarr at number 2? I'm kind of leaning that way. But especially because, again, I would say that this award, which I've completely made up, does have a component of being a good prospect as well. But
Alex,
why do you have Sarr there?
The rim protection numbers are genuinely encouraging. He's contesting 44% of opponent shots, and opponents are only making 50% on the ones he contests. That is really, really good overall.
Yeah,
and the Wizards,
he's a little lower in our rim protection stats because I think the Wizards overall are just getting carved up at the basket. He's not, and actually, I think this is pretty interesting because you see this on film. A lot of times we have these stats because they can capture some stuff that it's hard to see on film. Sarr is not really a deterrent around the basket. Maybe you can pull the Wizards like percentage of shots they're giving up at the rim. I recall it being pretty astronomical. But Sarr, he's contesting 44% of shots around the rim, which an astronomical number of shots around the rim too. But the issue is that he doesn't really pre-position himself. He covers a lot of ground, and he will go over and make guys miss at times too. But he's the way he will defend is the guy will drive, and then he covers ground, and he'll get a late contest on some, which is also a style that can leave the offensive boards exposed. Mm-hmm. Where the Wizards, I think, have been pretty terrible on the defensive glass, too. So there's a lot of raw things to like here, but I don't think that normally be like, 44, he's contesting 44% of shots around there, allowing 50% of shooting on those. Like, how is this guy not one of the best rim protectors in basketball? That's why.
Earlier in Defensive Player of the Year, I brought up that, and again, this is the extreme, that for the Thunder and the Thunder with Chet, the Wolves with Gobert, teams are shooting 28% of their shots inside 4 feet. That's 32% against the Wizards, but 32%, that's middle of the road. That's about league average, so it's way better than like the worst of the world. So I think that's fine. But what the other reason why Sarr, so I think for a player of this type, and I think that he's projectable. I think he can do better at this. I think of you're right to bring it up as volume as a part of that, but I think part of that is also the Wizards have pretty horrendous perimeter defenders overall. Not uniformly, but generally speaking. And I think of that as also a stat on what are you doing schematically, but also who you have around you. And so for Sarr, the other reason for me is that he's taking on a larger role within, there was a stretch time. So in terms of total creation, which is what you and I like to use, he's actually slightly behind Keyshawn George now in terms of what his role within the Wizards offense. But like for a big man, like he's doing a lot. And Sarr, he's a little bit below the league average, but I would like say, and well below the position. He's at 57% true shooting. Centers generally do better there because they have more shots around the basket. But Sarr, he's over that Mendoza line. He's taking 4 threes per 36. He's making 34.5% of those. He's getting there. And so the idea basically for me is that there aren't many players in this sophomore class who are starting and mattering on good teams. And I think that Alex Sarr's game could work with better surrounding talent that he just doesn't have right now.
getting back to his rim protection numbers quickly, when he's on the floor, Wizards are allowing 32% of shots at the rim, which is a slightly below average number. That is a much better number than when he's off the floor. When he's off the floor, remember it's Marvin Bagley and Tristan Vukcevic, who when he's not on the floor, they allow 37% of shots at the rim by opponents, which is a miserable number. So yeah, he's coming along, and I think having him here at number 2 is certainly reasonable. Steph Castle, too, obviously the three-pointer is not coming along at all. That's a big problem. And the other thing that people really underrate about him is how often he turns the ball over. He turns it over a ton. He's had some massive... I told this story before. Someone was tweeting at me of like, are you ever going to give Steph Castle his due? And he had like, X and X tonight in terms of points and assists. And I'm like, he had 10 turnovers tonight. Like it's just about impossible to have a good game when you turn the ball over 10 times. That's negative 10 points for your team right there. So, but that said, he is a very good on-ball defender. They have missed him in that regard. His synergy with Wembanyama has been excellent. He's athletic enough that he can hang out around the rim plenty as well, even if he's not going to be on the ball. So he can at least give you something there. So I think he probably would have to be second for me at this point in time. I still like Sarr better as a prospect. I'll go Sarr third. Apologies to AJ Mitchell, Donovan Clingan, and Zach Edey is really coming on lately. If he had started the year, we might be talking about him even at number 1. The way he's played, he's totally transformed Memphis' season with his return, it's been great with them having these absences and him getting to eat some. I've been really enjoying that experience so far.
Obviously this will not persist, but he has one of the larger on-off net rating differentials you will ever see. Again, small sample size, plus 22.6 on, negative 10 off. So that's a 32.6 difference in net rating for Zach.
Well, his plus 39 game against the Pelicans helped out there.
Plus 39 in the game that went to overtime.
Minutes. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was what was so crazy about that. Yeah. Okay, well, so your top 3 sophomores: Reed, Sarr, and
I'll do Stephon Castle. His assisting, his passing game has really improved. I love AJ Mitchell. But if part of sophomore is part of a made up award. It's you're thinking about who you could like with the team, and like AJ Mitchell is he's a very good guard in your rotation, but I don't know. Well, I'd love to be wrong, but I don't.
Yeah.
I've always been more skeptical of guards that are better scorers than they are passers. So we'll see with AJ. But I love him. But there are a lot of guys. Keyshawn George, I think, has been interesting. The Wizards they've been such a disaster that but I think that Keyshawn George and Alex are both players.
Yeah, Keyshawn George needed to be on this list too. That's the other guy that I haven't mentioned yet. All right, well, it's been 2 hours of recording time. I always forget that the first one of these takes forever because we basically have to introduce all these guys' cases. It gets easier as we go along throughout the season, and we've just talked about all these players more. So we've still got biggest surprise player, most disappointing player, biggest surprise team, most disappointing team, and our favorite executive of the year and not executive of the year so far to talk about. We'll probably get to that on Thursday, I think, because we actually have, for Dunc'd Prime subscribers, a live mailbag tomorrow. That's going to be at 5:30 Eastern, 2:30 Pacific. First one, you could jump in the Discord. Link to that is in your daily emails if you are a Prime subscriber. So please jump in. You can talk to us live and of course, the podcast will come out later, but we record it live on Discord. And then Wednesday, we'll do a gamer. And then so we'll probably get back to this, I think, Thursday. Hopefully, I don't think surprise players and executive of the year is going to change too much between now and then. These ones we had to bang them out while the stats were still fresh. So thanks again for listening. Please subscribe to Dunc'd Prime and subscribe to our YouTube as well, especially if you're watching on YouTube. Comment, like, very much appreciated. Even a subscription. That's probably even more important. Think of it. All right. Talk to you all next time.